What's up guys, this is Tony with Salt Strong, and if you've ever wondered what the lure weight rating means on a rod, we're going to talk about that in this video. So typically when you go to a tackle shop and you pick up a rod, you're going to see a number on the blank close to the reel seat that says maybe like a 1/4 ounce to 3/4 ounce, or an 1/8 ounce to 3/4 ounce, whatever the case may be. And what that means is that is the optimal range as far as the weight of the lure should be to properly load up that rod and get the best performance out of that rod. So if you're going too light, you're underloading that rod, you're not going to be able to cast as far, you're not going to have an accurate cast. And if you overload the rod, you go above that weight rating, you run the risk of actually breaking the rod. So you definitely want to pay attention to that. But one thing a lot of people sort of overlook when it comes to lure ratings is the actual weight of the lure that you're throwing. So most people just look at the jig head or the hook that they're using. For example, this is a 1/8 ounce hook, so they think, okay, it's 1/8 ounce, that's what it's going to be for the rod. Well, that's not the case, especially when you add a soft plastic to it. If you're using a soft plastic that is big, obviously it's going to increase more weight. If you're using a smaller soft plastic, it's not going to have as much weight. But whatever the case may be, if you're adding a lure to a hook or a jig head, it's going to be heavier than what that actual hook or jig head is. So if it's an 1/8 ounce, it may be closer to a 1/4 or a 1/2 ounce. If it's a 1/16 ounce and you add a lure to it, it may be closer to, maybe a 1/4 ounce. So you have to keep that in mind when it comes to the actual weight of the total lure itself, including the hook and the soft plastic. Now these two rods that I have here, this is our slot machine rod, and I have a medium power and I have a medium heavy power. The medium power is rated for an 1/8 ounce up to 3/4 ounce, and the medium heavy power is rated from a 1/4 ounce up to a 1 ounce. So medium heavy, typically you can throw heavier lures. The lighter the power, the lighter the lures are typically going to be. That's why when you're throwing, like, let's say live shrimp or something really light, you're going to want to go with a rod that has a lighter power, because you have more flex in the rod. That rod is going to do all the work to make that cast. When you're using a stiffer rod, pretty much the weight of the lure is going to do all the work. So for example, if I was throwing something big like this Skinny Lipper XL, or a topwater lure that has a good amount of weight to it, even a big paddle tail or swim bait, you really don't want to snap that rod too hard, because you could possibly break it. What you want to do is load that rod up using the weight of the lure to load that rod up and send that lure out. When you get to those lighter lures, that's when you want to go with a really sharp sort of dart cast, where you do a quick snap of the rod tip to use the rod to get that lure to go out. And that brings up another point. With these weight ratings, you can still get away with throwing, big pieces of cut bait or lures that are heavier than what the rod's rated for. You just have to adjust your cast. So in order to do that, what you want to do, and like I said, instead of doing a quick snap of the wrist or a dart cast, you want to load that rod up and sort of just lob that bait out there, lob that lure out there, let the weight of that lure or that bait do all the work, and the rod's just loading it up. You don't want to do a quick snap, because that can end up breaking your rod. And also when it comes to rod manufacturer warranties, they're pretty strict about those weight ratings. So if you say, well, I was throwing this 2 ounce lure or jig head and my rod broke, well, the rod's only rated for a 3/4 ounce or a 1 ounce. So you may run into issues there when it comes to actually getting a warranty on your rod. So just be careful with that. So hopefully this clears some things up when it comes to lure ratings on rods. Again, that's the optimal range in which the rod is going to load up properly to perform at its best. So again, you don't necessarily want to go above that or under it, or you're just not going to get the most out of the rod that you're using. And again, if you're interested in these rods here, these are the slot machine rods. We sell them at fishstrong.com. Also, these reels are the Otis 2500 reels. Great combo to use inshore, even out there on the lake if you're fishing for bass or freshwater species. And again, you can pick them up at fishstrong.com. And if you're one of our insiders, keep in mind you do get a good discount on all tackle and gear. So be sure to take advantage of that. We want people to get out there and start catching more fish, all while saving money on the tackle and gear that you need to do so. So be sure to check that out at fishstrong.com. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them down below.